Hello everybody. In this lesson, we learn about values. Basically, we learn about Python data. Values, types, identity of objects in Python. You also learn about variables and their naming. And we're going to practice this concept as well. So let's start. We're going to start by discussing about values. So the values are basically the entities that program manipulates. Okay, it could be a number, it could be a string, it could be something else. So those are the values we deal with day-to-day life, and it's the same in programming as well. So in our previous program, we manipulated the value hello world. Okay, all values are Python objects. And sometimes we interchangeably use these two words. Sometimes we say it's a value, sometimes we say it's an object. It doesn't matter. There's no confusion usually because all values are Python objects. Every object has three things: data type or a class. Sometimes we call the data type the class, a value, and an identity. Every Python object has these three things. We can use the type built-in function to figure out the type of a value. Okay, so let's practice on that. So I'm going to switch back to my interpreter to test on this. Let's say I want to figure out the type of the number 10, and it printed class type. So class means the type, so it's integer type. So let's figure out the type of hello world. All right, oops, I made a mistake. All right, what's the mistake? I forgot to enclose this word, this phrase, hello world, in a quotation, in between quotation marks. So it resulted the syntax error. So this is one of the very common syntax error in Python. So I take this opportunity to explain this error as well. So if you made a mistake in the grammar of the programming language, you're going to get a syntax error. So let's fix that. So it's missing quotation marks. All right, so fix that, and we call this string literal. It's a literal, the type would be string, and we'll see now. Okay, it's a string. So the type name is str, which is for the string. Okay, so word phrases, text phrases are string type in Python. Okay, all right, so let's move on to our lesson. Every value has a data type as well, and we just saw that through the type command. Okay, so all right, so for example, 131, which is in our class code, 131, it's an integer number, and hello world is a string type. Okay, so we just verified the hello world is a string type, and integers we just verified with 10. Integer number is integer. Okay, and this type going to get realized at runtime. When Python execute code, the Python going to realize the type. Okay. In other languages like Java and then C++ and even C, you need to define your variable first with the type. You need to first say, this is my data type. This is going to be the type. In Python, it is not the case. Basically, while Python running its code, Python going to infer the type from the value itself. If it is integer value, Python going to take the type as int. So for this reason, so that means type going to realize at runtime. For this reason, we say Python is dynamically typed language. Okay. And this is, by the way, guys, this is a really common interview question. Basically, interviewer asks, what type of a language is Python? Or how the type system work? Those kind of questions. Okay. So it's really common interview question in Python. Okay. So if the sentiments agree, we can also convert between types as well. Okay. So semantics, right? If it should be doable thing to do. Okay. All right. If the semantics not agree, basically, if we try to intermingle with data, basically, we're gonna get a type error. Okay, let's check on these now. Okay, so the first one, we're gonna check this. What we are going to do is we're gonna basically use this. Um, okay, we're gonna use. So these are the type conversion function. These are all built-in function. Int is basically take something and then return an integer value. So int, so we can convert the string form of the number 131 into just the integer, just the numeric version, integer numeric version of number 131. Okay, so we got 131. So we can verify actually using type function. So let's just do that as well real quick. Int, so type and print int. Okay, and by the way, guys, throughout my slides, I use this symbol to say return value. Okay, so this is to say return value, and the other purpose I am going to use this symbol is to say a variable is referring to a value. Okay, we're gonna go over this just about in the next lesson. Okay, all right. So the next thing we want to test out is this one. Okay, so let's try to, let's say, so let's take some value for x, say 10. So it's a string value. Okay, plus 5. Okay, let's try to do this, and it's a type error. Okay, so Python doesn't allow this operation. Okay, it can figure out the type dynamically, but doesn't allow to mess with types. So here I have the string type, and I'm now trying to add the numeric type, integer type, which is numeric type. And in mathematics, this is not allowed operation. This doesn't make sense. But if we take uh, a language like JavaScript, it actually allows this. It's basically convert this phi also into a string and concatenate the both string. Okay, so it has benefits and also the drawbacks as well. Okay, all right, so let's continue with our slides. So for that reason, we say Python strongly typed. So basically, type check is built into the language. Okay, it checks the type, both type, to be conformative each, and then only if that is correct, it performs the action. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't do that. So it strongly check the type. So Python is a strongly typed language. So it's another interview question as well. On the other hand, JavaScript, we call it weakly typed because it allows this kind of operations to move forward. Okay. So in JavaScript, this will be X5. Okay. All right. So let's moving on. Okay. So let's learn about variables. We know that in mathematics, we use variables to assign something, some value to that variable and reuse it again and again. Right? Same thing over here as well. Okay. So we use variables in programming languages for bookkeeping purpose. Bookkeeping means we we assign a value to that variable and we're going to reuse the name of the variable instead of that value whenever we need to make a reference to that variable, that value. Okay. All right. So we use assignment statement to create variables in Python. So simply we can create our class name like this. So this is the variable name, and we use the assignment token, and then we use the value that we want to assign to our variable name, class name. And this whole line of code, we call it assignment statement. All right. Now there are a few things to remember with assignment. In mathematics, assignment work either way. If x equals y, then y also equals to x. But not in programming, this is not the case. So it only works from left to right. So don't follow algebra here with assignment. Okay. So you can read it like class name is assigned to or referring to the value CS131B. Okay. You can also use the reference diagram in like below class name. This is why I earlier said I will use this arrow to indicate a variable reference diagram. So this is actually a reference diagram. In this case, class name is referring to the value CS131B. Okay. So let's continue with our variables lesson. So usually names in Python, we call them commonly identifiers. Okay. We have variable names, we have function names, we can write our own modules in Python. So module names, we will call built-in modules. So they have names. We will write classes in this class. So classes has names. Commonly, we call all of them identifiers. And there's a naming convention for naming identifiers. Okay, so let's click on that. I am actually going to go to that website. So this is from actually Python's own documentation. Okay, let's take a quick look. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll down a little bit, and you can see class names. So this is the style guide for naming, not only for naming, for everything in Python, including code patterns. Style guide. Okay, so like for example, we call a style guide, let's say when some journals have a way of formatting their papers, so we call it a style guide. So here is the style guide from Python to use in Python programming. Okay, and you can see type variable names, exception names, function and variables names. So this where we are basically right now interested. Okay, so and you can read about this. Basically, variable names start with a small letter, and if you have to be more expressive, you can separate them with an underscore. Okay, I highly recommend for you to use an underscore to write expressive names whenever you code. Okay, your code will be easy to read. You may even get reward as an engineer. Okay, because some company promotes on that, because basically someone else can easily read your code and understand, because it's really close to English, so they understand what you are doing with your code. Okay, all right, so let's go back to our slides. So please check this website. All right, and identify a name. So these are some preliminary rules. Okay, must begin with a letter or an underscore. Okay, so underscore part, we're not gonna use it right now, but when we go to the classes and object lesson, you will see they will come into play. Okay, and we already saw that the underscore in play also. Let me quickly show you that as well right here. See that? That's the two underscores in front of a name, and here also. Okay, so but um, these are not common with our programming. These are, we call them internals in Python. So basically using underscore is restricted to internals, uh, writing internal things inside Python. Okay, you will see many things written for you from Python has these patterns of naming. Okay, all right. So of course we'll use them in writing our own classes as well. All right, no special characters or spaces. Okay, you cannot use special characters inside or spaces inside names. Can't use Python keyword, and it's obvious, like keywords or reserved words, and they are actually reserved for Python to do what it does. Like for example, this def keyword, Python knows like, okay, there's a function definition going to be here. Python identify that using this def keyword. And if keyword, Python knows that, okay, there's going to be some sort of a selection going to happen, such as if or here. So if you try to use it for your purpose, now Python is confused. Okay, so can't use Python reserved words or keywords. All right. So naming violation returns syntax errors. Okay. So again, always use expressive name so that you express what you do in the name. Okay. So let's check on few of these things, right? So I'm gonna go back to the beginning of this slides. Okay, we check out the previous one. Yeah. Okay. So all right. So let's try to create qualified names and few unqualified names, and then check on these. All right. So I'm going to create a variable. Let's say using name def equals 131b. Okay, right? I got a syntax error because it's invalid syntax. You cannot use the def keyword. Okay, so let's try to create the same with exclamation marks. That also syntax error. I'm going to create one with a space in between. That also error. Okay, so what else did we do? Yep, so I think that was a, or must begin with a letter. So let's try to do the same with let's say like 1. That also error. Okay, you cannot start your letter with a number. It has to be a letter. Okay, it cannot be a special character as well. It has to be a letter or underscore. And if we try to use an underscore, well, it will not explain. Sorry, it will not complain. Okay, can even use 2 underscores as well. Okay, and it works too. You can put something behind as well. Okay, that works as well. All right, but please don't use this. Okay, don't use this pattern. Just because you are allowed doesn't mean that you can use this. You shouldn't use them because you use this for internals. Okay, and writing classes which will come later. Okay, all right. So then what we have to do, we gonna write a proper expressive name, say class code. It's our class code, and that's this. Okay, all right. So that's about variables. Sorry. All right. So let's now talk about identity of an object. Okay, let's say, remember we said earlier object has 3 things: value, type, and identity. We're going to talk about the identity of an object. Okay, every object has an identity in Python, and that basically, that identity value, value, and type basically uniquely identify an object. Okay, those 3 things: identity, value, and type uniquely identify an object. We can use the id function, id built-in function, to return the identity. In this case, I got the abbreviation id of an object. Okay, so let's quickly check on that. So we created a variable over here and this value. So I'm going to use that value with id functions, id, and copy that. Okay, and this is the id value. See that it's an integer. Okay, so move on. Oops. So id value, it's a unique integer values, and then we saw that over here, we obtained that value. Okay, so this integer is related to this value's location in memory, basically the memory address. Okay, in C representation in Python, this is actually related to the memory address. Okay, so basically it says that, okay, this is where this value is located. Okay, so, and part of the identity, right? So it's the location in memory. All right. Sorry. Okay, 2 different variables may have same id. Okay, and when that happen, we say they are aliased. Okay, so And aliasing is a significant topic, and we're going to learn more on that in our list lesson later in this class. Okay, so also we will learn more on ID later as well. So that is the end of this portion of our lesson. I hope to see you all in the next one.